that you guys are here. Just give you a really quick roundup. We're going to have a first CV in the first segment, 15 minutes. Then we've got somebody asking entrepreneurship questions, then a 15-minute segment for you to answer any questions that you have, and we'll answer all of them in the chat. And finally, another CV at 4:45. So if you do have any questions, please pop them in the chat right now. And we'll get around to answering as many of them as possible. Thank you so much. Awesome. So let's invite in Ali, who have our first CV to talk about.
And he's joined us.
Hey, Ali, can you hear us?
Hi. Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Yeah.
Great. How are you, Amir, and how are you, Azhar?
We're really good. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're pretty good. I'm loving your background, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think let's get straight into it. How can we help you today, Ali? Like, what would you like to go over?
Yeah. So let me give a brief introduction. My background, my bachelor's, it was in accounting and finance. And now in fall 2020, I'll be starting my master's in data science and business analytics from ESSEC Business School, Paris. So the basic idea is to, get an understanding of where I'm going wrong with my CVs. If you could give me some value adding points so that I can improve this, because next year, by the time I graduate from my master's, I'll be applying for all these, management consultancies and all these multinationals in France. So I need to know where I'm going wrong with these, because you guys are already based out in the UK, and you know how the recruitment process works over there. So
are you going to be applying? So which business school are you at? And are you going to be applying to companies in France? Like, are you with French-speaking countries, Francophone?
Yes, I will be. Yeah.
Okay. The first thing I want to say is that French CVs actually work quite differently.
Right.
So often they have pictures in them. And the way you might want to do it is actually quite different to the way they work in in the US and the UK. You need like a photo, and the kind of style that you need for if you go to INSEAD or something like that is going to be quite different. Is the first thing, like, very important as a big disclaimer. Like, find some good French CV examples, because and take what we say with a bit of a pinch of salt, because it will be different.
Okay.
Yeah. That being said, though, I'm just going to hop straight into the CV, and run through it. Okay, so a couple of things. The first check that I do on any CV that I ever look at, for all the viewers at home, is on the aesthetic, the formatting. So one thing that sticks out to me here is your formatting changes in too many different places. So this is something that will, raise a red flag quite early on. So it's something that's really easy to correct as well. So no need to worry about it. But for example, the fonts are slightly different in different places, like different font sizes from the top versus the rest of it. Some of the lines are in gray, whereas others are in black. And if you go slightly up. Same thing with... I think that's mainly like same thing with the date, right? Your date for the education in June 2019 is a lot smaller than your dates in other places. So the first tip is, get complete consistency in terms of how you're doing in the entire CV. Same thing I also think in terms of the bullet points. Like the bullet points are using, I know you're using it to convey different sub-levels of information, but having like a consistent bullet pointing format throughout, I think is also important. So that's purely on a formatting basis. The second and probably like more valuable tip is remember that anyone viewing your CV has zero context, right? They haven't been there to see the work that you've been doing as part of any kind of organization. So they have zero context, right? So it's really important that you tell them why what you did is impressive and what the result of what you did is impressive. So just describing it isn't going to tell me why it's impressive. So, for example, when you mention, as part of a Kareem, you met your demand target of 50 rides during the first week of test phasing. That doesn't mean anything to me because I don't know why that's impressive. Whereas if you tell me that, I don't know, that you project manage the rollout of, an early stage product doing this, and this, and ensured that it all went to plan, then I can see the value that you've added to that institution. In the same way, when you mention conducted survey of 500 Cream users, that doesn't tell me value again. But if you told me, you conducted, I don't know, initial testing with X many users, which then led to the implementation of these new features within the next prototype, I'm like, okay, you're actually influencing the company and adding value there. And lastly, exact same thing with creating the 10 new bus lines. Like, tell me how much money that saved. Tell me the process by which that got implemented. And then when I read that as a different company, I'm like, this guy comes up with plans, he takes initiative. And as a result of his taking initiative, he actually saved a lot of money. He created a lot of new revenue as well. So really be very clear in terms of the value that you're creating and don't assume that they understand the context, is my advice.
Okay.
Yeah, I sort of pick up on some areas which can be really impressive. So when you quantify and use numbers, that can be very, very special. So what I really like here is you've highlighted it because you can tell it's the most important one. You managed to save, I believe that many rupees, like 600,000. That's incredibly impressive. But I want that put out from did you do this on your own initiative? How did it happen? Kind of, I want a little bit more information to tell me that's truly impressive. So for example, it can be which is 10% more than the average cost saving, or it's it's never been done before, or this is the first year you had cost savings, something like that, to be like, this is unique to you. It's not a normal thing to have these kind of cost savings found in the salaries, but that is really impressive to kind of write down. I've probably changed like the little phrasing here, though accompanied by 10% increase in costs. I'd probably leave it out, or something along those lines. I want to know about when you say you developed a business plan, but it just sounds like you ran forecasts. I want to know how you were involved in the leadership of that, what you spearheaded. Maybe you ran something that was involved that you as an individual had a very great impact in, and how that led to it. So we always make the distinction between kind of like description versus value add. Like at times you're often describing what you've done as opposed to explaining the value that you've added to the employer. Like, what have you really brought them that only you could have done so that was necessarily unique, if that sort of makes sense?
Yeah. So, that does make sense. Yeah.
So for example, I'm just going to give you a really quick example, right? Talk me through exactly what you did when you conducted that financial analysis and saved that much money.
So while I was running this financial analysis, so what a key finding one of the key findings was that there were these employees who were fixed upon a project, and they weren't able to deliver the first phase of the project, and as a result we had our costs for the second phase increased because we were already behind on the deadline. We had to hire more resources. That meant more salaries. That meant the other costs also started to rise up. But what we did was a remedy which I came up with was that why don't we, for the second phase of this project, we come up with a new team which is highly skilled, and we have a manager who knows his stuff regarding this regarding the project we were doing. And in this, what happened was that we managed to hire resources on lesser salaries, and as a result, we managed to cut down the salary costs. I didn't incorporate the costs we saved during the phase 2 of that project, but
so pause for a second.
So that's how we I'm came up with the calculation of the 0.6 million rupees, because I was looking at the long-term impact which that move had, the remedy which I came up with.
Okay, so
I hope, yeah.
Couple of things, Ali. So what you actually did there is really impressive. And, to talk about it so vaguely is to do yourself a disservice, right?
Yeah.
So the way that I would talk about it, so if I were you,
Yeah.
this is all the stuff that I'd add to show that I was adding crazy value. So
Yeah.
I would talk about, how I reconfigured a performance staffing plan for my project, and how, as a result of this, I was able to actually optimize the cost savings by this amount by having fewer staff on. I would also mention, that the project as a result of my implementation, the project was delivered, 5 weeks earlier than would have otherwise been expected. So when an employer reads that, they're going to go, he saves time, he saves money, he gets it done, and he shows initiative, Whereas when I read you saying, that you've conducted financial analysis, it sounds incredibly vague to me. And same with a finding, right? You want to be specific, so they can see your transferable skills. So that's one, big example that, we've kind of shown, how to rework that to make it sound really impressive.
Yep.
Lastly,
that's why I'm here. Yep.
Sorry.
That's why I'm here, so I can, deliver this in a much better way.
You're definitely I really like your enthusiasm, man, in order to improve and stuff. I think it will do well, you have that mindset. One other thing I want to mention is do that exact same thing where you look through the rest of your CV to identify what is and is not adding value and what is descriptive. A lot of your work that you did at AF Ferguson & Co. is purely descriptive. So definitely have a think through that. I personally would completely remove the academic projects work.
Okay.
Not because it's not impressive, but because it isn't necessarily clear about transferable skills to me and why it was adding value. And I would expand specifically upon the vice president role. I think you could probably have, 3 different bullet points there. I want to know exactly what you did that led to that 700,000 in sponsorships. Were you liaising with the sponsors, all that kind of stuff? And I want to hear about your leadership with those 12 teams in terms of making sure, that there were no errors or mistakes in the management involved within that.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, go on.
Yes, I want to echo as I said, a lot of your things are genuinely very impressive, and it's incredibly clear you're a very smart and diligent individual who knows what he's doing. Exactly as I said, I would personally, when you talk about this bullet point, say that you kind of, brought into a project that wasn't doing too well, or you were called in to intervene in a project and create a rescue plan, and as a part of that, maybe you reduced the cost, you hired other people, that eventually led to this kind of cost saving and the other stuff that was, was it the employee rescue, something like that. The phrasing that you say with that, and then, as a result, that's how much you save the company, is going to be impeccable, and you save time, you save money, is incredibly important. Equally want to echo this stuff about, did you say you wanted to get into management consulting potentially?
No, but I'll be applying for management consultancies, but I'm more interested into, risk management. So I'd see where that, leads me to.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to see what kind of things you want to get to and kind of aim your skills in that particular direction. So, for example, a lot of these projects, it's unclear where the value lies or what the impact was. However, if for some of them, for risk, maybe some of this kind of regression analysis is really important within risk management potentially, then it may be really important to include it. Whereas if it isn't the case, then maybe it's not worth it. I would say look at what careers you want to get into and specifically tie for those. If you want to get into consulting, you need more leadership experience. For example, this kind of stuff here, I think you can really expand upon and completely remove this because it's from 2013, and focus on exactly what you did, how you led the team, how you liaised, how you created a culture of transformational leadership, and how you did that. Right. And see if maybe you can link these academic projects to anything, but otherwise remove them because it's unclear what the tangible impact of it was.
Okay.
And one last thing, because we are pressed for time, but one last thing is, right, whatever you're tailoring to, it's going to sound really silly. Just remember to tailor everything to that. So, for example, risk consulting, right? When you talk about the project that you're working up, if you scroll up a minute slightly.
I couldn't hear you on that last part. There was a distortion. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Mention that for the project that you were brought onto, that it was a high risk rating project, that you came onto the high risk rating project and you organized and implemented a performance staffing plan, which enabled them to optimize their resources by this percentage and, reach the delivery date 4 weeks ahead of schedule. And that way, even when you're applying to risk management, they're going to go, okay, this person, not only can he evaluate risk, but he can actually mitigate risk, So loads of different tailoring that can go on there.
Thank you on that. That was a really important one. Thank you.
No worries at all, Ali. Keep us updated of how it all goes. And pleasure to have you on the show, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you soon. My only final comment is just check out French CVs because there'll be nuances there.
I'll keep that in mind, but in fact, I'll look at those. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye, man.
Bye.
I think Salim is waiting in the lobby, so we can invite him in now.
Yep. He's been there for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. Equally, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. So I'll just type that out as well.
And I think Salim's just joining us.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, Salim, how are you? Salim's been a really good friend of mine for a while now, and it's really good to have him on the show. We can't see your face, unfortunately, though.
1 second.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, how are you two doing? What have you been up to today?
To be honest, a lot of strategy. To be honest, 4, 5, 6 hours of strategy, mainly on the startup, and just talking through that, and then a bit of steer, meeting people like yourself, which we really enjoy as well.
Cool. What about you, Amir? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm literally the same. Me and Azhar been doing it together, and that's been most of the day. What about you, man? What did you want to talk about? Was it the startup that you kind of wanted to discuss and kind of get some thoughts on?
Yeah. So I have the business which is kind of medium sized in the supplying car parts in the automotive industry. So I have an e-commerce business, and I do a lot of resale, not wholesale as much, but that's one business that I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But the thing that I wanted to talk to you about specifically was the startups that I'm investing in. Mm-hmm. So it's very early stage at the moment. So we have the product ready. I want to say the product. It's augmented reality. So we have the code, but we're working on branding and trademark. I've talked to some patent lawyers. So that's kind of just the conversation I wanted to have with you.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit more context about, as much as you are comfortable saying about what it actually is.
Yeah, sure. So it's augmented reality. So have you two played Pokemon Go?
Yeah. It just appears in your vision, you put it up there and it pops up.
Yeah. So there's these 3 students who, for their final year computer science project, they created this game where it's a better version of Pokemon Go, essentially, where instead of the Pokemon just being static, it can be controlled. So say, for example, me and you have a phone. So I'm on my phone, you're on your phone, and you're sat across me in the park. Me and you will walk up to each other, and then we say, "Yo, I want to battle with you." Then we whip out our phone, and then the Pokemons come out in front of us, and then they kind of fight each other. That's what they've made at the moment. But obviously, we can't bring that to market because Pokemon are trademarked. So what I'm doing now is a lot of market research of where I want to see this going, which kind of, how should I say, which market segment are we focusing on, which demographic are we focusing on, which genre. So in my idea, so next 2 weeks, I'm just going to do a lot of research, kind of consultancy style, breaking down, market breakdown, all that kind of stuff. So that's why I approached you specifically, Amir, because I know you're the consultant, right?
Yeah, so I've got many thoughts, but a couple of questions before we begin. What is your goal with this startup? Like, do you want it to go as big as possible? Do you just want to be successful? Like, what is the aim here? That's all I want to know first before we go into anything.
There's my aim, and then there's the aim of the free kind of software developers, and then there's the aim of the company, which we haven't like formally defined, because in strategy you have to formally define a vision statement and a mission statement and a company values. I've done that for my other business, but I haven't done it for the startup because it's so early stage. So,
what's your specific aim?
My specific aim. So it's so as a middle, I hold Islam very close to my heart, and I base a lot of my decision based on my religion. And to me, I thought this was an opportunity to help out free other Muslims to kind of get better in. Okay, better way to put it is that the free scholarship students who went to the best university in Pakistan, who are from poor backgrounds themselves, and have got good access to a good network of people, and I also have I make a lot of risk, so that's the Arabic word for kind of wealth, I would say. So I have a lot access to wealth and a network which I can invest into a business. And even though I'm quite young, I have always tried to help out people through charity work, and I've always run business on the side. For me, it's just another opportunity to help people, really. And
so how can we help you today, Salim?
So it's with like the market research. How should I approach that? So I have a rough idea in my head, but in terms of, okay, what is the best route? I'm not sure yet.
Okay, so I have a few things to kind of very roughly say here. I think the first thing is identifying what your and their goals are, because what you've told me is one of your goals seems to be impact, right? Like, how many lives can you affect and improve, and in what capacity? I think that will look very different from market research in different ways. A different goal is like, if you want it to become the biggest company possible, the way you sell and if you want to make as much profit, that will look very different if you want to try and do impact. Because
that's okay. Sorry. Yes, I was just going to say my goal is impact, but the company's goal, I just assume they want to be the biggest possible. They want to make the most kind of like revenue, the leading gaming app. But so my goal is slightly different, but it can be aligned through like a united vision statement, so to speak, for the organization. I feel that comes later. Like, it's not the startup. That's when you can become bigger and bigger, right?
Yeah. So what I would do personally is, first of all, look at all the places AI is being used in the world. Aim to do augmented reality. I'd Google it, see wherever it's being used, and investigate the main archetypes that come up. So by archetype, I mean like industry. So augmented reality within education, augmented reality within gaming, and look at how it's being used in those different segments. That's the first thing. Secondly, decide if you're B2B or B2C. Are you like the app itself, or do you sell to other people? So what you can do is take the API, go to a very high level, create what is essentially another language within that, and say, look, you can make whatever you want to make, but as a company. So if you're Facebook, you can purchase our AR software, program it yourself, and use that as like a base framework, kind of like, say how if you were doing machine learning, it would be the equivalent to TensorFlow, right? So decide whether you want to be B2B or B2C within that. And because the latter has incredibly great scale. Like, if you are a company which just does AR for other companies, people would purchase the hell out of that, and it would be incredibly popular, and you can have a wide impact in many use cases. But if you want a specific case, then you might want to do something like B2B, so B2C, and see how you can impact individuals. I don't know, Azhar, if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I agree with that generally. I think a couple of things, actually. The first thing is you need to get a united front, generally speaking, with your group as soon as possible, because you have to find what aligns all of you. Like, because when you mention the religious thing, that's like the end product, but what you actually want is impact through that. Like, sorry?
In terms of, what do you mean by united front? Do you mean like a formal vision statement?
It's not about writing it down. It's about making sure you're all on the same page, because
I think that's done. That's pretty much done. As in, we're all on the same page. Like, it's very clear how I can help them, how they can help me, what their goals are, what my goals are, where we align. As in, I hashed that out in the first meeting I had.
In which case, then the demographics that you're going for and the market segments that you're going for, it should be, quite clear to both of you which ones you're going for. Naturally, you have, okay, perfect. The next thing that I would suggest you doing is read the Lean Startup. It's a book I recommend to all
One of my
entrepreneurs.
friends recommended me that. So I'm reading 3 books at the moment. So the first one is The Unfair Advantage, The Lean Startup, and I was reading Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell yesterday.
Mhm.
Those are the 3 ones. I've just been so busy that like I haven't had much time reading, because I've been doing a lot of MMA because I want to have my first fight soon. So which is why I'm wearing like a hoodie and like sport headphones, because I'm gonna go out to train later. So I've been like prioritizing exercise over reading at the moment.
What I'd say is read the summary. You can get a lot of is it probably 15-minute video you can watch on YouTube that tells you the main ideas. Like you'll obviously absorb a lot more from the book generally, but if you want the main ideas, they're quite simple and it'll explain it very, very well. Stuff like the Lean Startup and Running Lean, specifically by Ash Maurya, is an excellent book that goes into details about the lean methodology of startups and how you can do that. Essentially, your problem right now is you have amazing technology and you have no idea where it's going to fit into the market, but you have a great hunch that it fits in somewhere. The Lean Startup is all about very quickly testing base assumptions and finding and cheaply testing them in a way in which you can iterate and get closer and closer to wherever that magical space lies that your technology has great impact and has that kind of vision. And so the kind of potential market impact as well. So I would watch a 15-minute video on it and start iterating and trying out different hypotheses about ways it can work.
One last piece of advice from me. I think this is something that, every young founder, so if you're an entrepreneur watching this, try and follow this, I guess. When myself and Amir were building our prototype, we actually didn't pay for any of it initially because we got funding from other places. So we had to risk zero capital. And even if you have got, money or wealth or anything from other businesses, definitely have a look into external funding that might be specific to the industry within which you're going in. It might be, grant funding, with no strings attached. It might be, innovation funding that is being given to get more people to go into this industry. Because, ideally, you spend zero money when you're starting with this, and you can save your funding for later on, for when you really want to give it that little push. So,
Are your friends from Imperial?
No, so they're actually 3 people from, I think it's a Pakistani university, Nest, I think, or NUST, something like that.
Okay.
But they're some of the best students in Pakistan. Like I look at their work and I see this is on par with Imperial students, if not better. And I don't know if you heard of the company Improbable. Yeah. So like Dave literally came out Imperial like 3-4 years ago. Literally, I see it very similar to that in terms of its starting stages. As in, if they recruit more software engineers, it can definitely get to that level, in my opinion. But obviously, there's lofty goals, lofty ambitions. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Lean Startup. Look at kind of how that is kind of working. And try and get them to iterate on different things. Apply for grant funding. Apply for stuff. Are they software engineers themselves? Yeah.
So as in, they don't have any business knowledge, and English isn't their first language. So it's kind of good that they've got me involved. As I have that network, and I can go to like in London, go to kind of get that angel investors, and as you were saying, funding and stuff. Because it's really, really big thing at Imperial, especially. So that's something as soon as once I get back into London, that's something which I will be looking at.
Yeah, I think next steps are get them to build a minimal viable product. So you'll make a hypothesis of where you think you're going to land. Let's say it's in gaming, maybe, right? Build a very simple version of that. Test the hypothesis, learn from that, see if it's something people would buy, and then have a 1 week, you'll read this in the Lean Startup, like a 1 week learning cycle where you test your hypothesis with real people in some sort of a fashion and see if it works in the real world. And then if it doesn't work, move and change on. If it does work, tweak it and make it as good as possible. The best way I can describe how do you learn cheaply is an example in the Lean Startup, which is as follows. If I go back 25 years and I want to make a shoe store, the biggest hypothesis I have is, an online shoe store, are people willing to buy shoes without trying them on? It's something you don't know. Back then, no one knew that. So what someone did is they took pictures of shoes in Shoe Zone and they put them on Craigslist and they were like, does anyone want to buy this? I'll pick them up for you. And the truth is people were willing to purchase those shoes. So that's a way of zero development cost of testing the most fundamental hypothesis, which is all the lean startup is about. Like creating cheap ways of testing the most underlying hypotheses and using that to figure out where your product ought to lie. So I would read that, continually iterate until you find something that works. And when you've got an MVP and it's working and it's got traction, that is, say, people are liking it, I'd go to investment and kind of see if you can make it bigger.
Cool. Yeah, that's solid advice. I will. Yeah, can you send me the link for? Just DM me in the link. I'll definitely check out the video that you were mentioning.
Yeah, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll do that.
Cool. Awesome. Yep. Pleasure to meet you, Salim, and best of luck with the stuff. Let us know how it goes.
Thanks. Keep in contact, Azhar. I don't think I've actually spoken to you properly.
No, definitely, we'll make that happen at some point. Don't worry.
Okay. Thanks for giving me your time as well. Appreciate it.
No worries at all, man.
Bye, man.
All right, take care.
You too.
Awesome. If you're watching right now at home, please do put a question down because we're going to go through everyone's questions the next kind of 10, 15 minutes or so, very roughly. So if you do have a question, please pop it in. Cool. So I think we've got a couple of questions here. Vishwa has asked, as you talked about deleting academic projects, shall we include the unit studied during coursework from your university in the education section? For example, my course is business accounting. Should I briefly mention the units that I studied?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it depends on what you're applying for, personally. So this is my personal recommendation is if you're applying for something like investment banking or something that requires something, and you've done financial modeling, it might actually be good to include that in to show the employee that you have those skills. At the same time, though, generally, I recommend not including modules and saving space, for your professional work experience and those things. And if you are going to include a module within which you did exceptionally well in. So if you, I don't know, got like 92% in a module in your degree, please do include that because I want to know that, you've got that background of academic excellence. And if you've done like a dissertation on something that is directly relevant to the job to which you're applying for, include that as well, because the employer is going to see that, you're fascinated in this beyond just someone who's randomly applying. But in terms of blanket, including all your modules, so every single job you apply for, I would recommend against that.
Yeah, completely agreed on that front. In summary, two things. One, if it's an excellent result, put it in. Secondly, if it's directly or in some way tangentially related to the degree you're studying, or sorry, your degree modules relate to the job that you're applying for, or in general will relate to jobs. This is especially true if you are applying to technical positions. So yeah. Junior's asked a fantastic question. How long did your research period last with education equation? How do you dictate how long that would last? Was it when you felt ready to move forward, or did you have a pre-existing deadline? An excellent question, Junior.
I'll let you answer that one, Amir.
So I actually think it was a process of continual learning. Like, to say that we think we've got the answer and be like, oh, this is what we're going to go for now, was always dangerous. Although there's a degree to which you have to lock in as you go along. So there was, I think, a period of about a month where we were doing a lot of market research. So we were, interviewing a variety of people, interviewing both students, teachers, individuals, and that learning changed over time. So we actually made screen mock-ups of what our platform would look like and drew them on paper to illustrate that before we got someone to make it properly, like paid someone to do it, and before we got someone to program that itself. So there were loads of stages in which we were doing learning and testing our hypotheses. Although actually like several years, so it's like about several months before we decided on EE, we massively pivoted from a different business. Like we were going to have a completely different business that wasn't related to this at all. And it was only we went to an educational and edtech conference called BEPS that happens in February every year, that we kind of realized we wanted to change our ambitions and change what we were doing. So, and it only came to speaking to loads of different people who are in this space already that we got that insight. So I think in summary, you're always learning, but you have to cement it as you go along. And the way you can do that is by getting further and further down that learning path in terms of the iterations you do. And that's kind of how, I don't know, Azhar, if you have any other insights.
One thing that I'd like to add, I don't know if any of you know Asim Qureshi on LinkedIn. He says something which I find quite funny actually, which is people take way too long before they start acting. Like, it's the comfortable thing to, write up a 30-page business plan and like spend, months and months on doing market research before you feel ready. But by the time that you feel ready, the joke is that someone has already done initial research, got a system for doing that research weekly, already developed the platform, and now they're far ahead of you and they're getting angel investment. So I think don't spend too long in the research phase because learning is a continual process. So yeah, that would be my biggest piece of advice. Like, we still are doing competitor analyses and research every single week.
Yeah, I want to echo that. For most people, this balance will lie that you don't act quickly enough. Like, and if you're that person, like, limit yourself to like 10 days worth of research and just do, and then act, right? Read The Lean Startup, read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, read some like basic intro and like get a bit of theory down, research your market and see what investors look for and what is important. 10 days, boom, done. Start making something by going out there. I think that's the biggest mistake a lot of people make. They don't act quickly enough.
Yep.
Fab. Thank you for kind comments as well, Junior. Hannah M, who's always a regular, gotta love her comments. She says, do you have any tip for public speaking?
Ooh. A few actually. So I'm going to leave like the confidence and all that stuff to Amir. But I think understanding the science of what makes a good public speaker. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to have type into Google a TED talk on how to be how to make people listen when you speak. I think is the name of that TED talk. And it really breaks down the science of what makes people like want to listen. All right. So this is stuff that me and Amir have been doing for a while. So we do it unconsciously now, but I'll just show you a few like sneak peeks of what it is. So a couple of different techniques is changing your voice. So when I want you to listen, I speed up or I slow down. I focus my intonations on certain words or I don't. I take pauses, and doing all of these different things, using my hands, and not having them lit by my side of my body language. Understanding the science behind what makes a good public speaker will enable you to tap into that when you are speaking. So that'll be my tip.
Yeah, I think that there are many tips online that you will find. What I'm going to say now is not anything about those tips, but rather how can you utilize those tips and use them in a way that's genuinely effective? Because often you'll read them and be like, oh yeah, that's cool, that makes sense. And then you'll never do anything with them in the real world. Public speaking is a skill which, like all other skills, requires work. Like, you wouldn't expect someone to read a guide on how to go to the gym and suddenly become really strong. That's not how it works. And people seem to think that for some reason, that's how it should work with public speaking. It takes a lot of effort and dedicated effort. So what I would do is, this is how some people from Team England used to kind of train when they were doing debating. Some people did this thing where they would have speeches that they record on topics or things they believed or whatever it is, that you believe in. Maybe a different topic every day. Maybe it's a debate. Maybe it's a public issue. Maybe it's you making a new announcement. I don't know what it is. You record in front of the mirror. You actually record it as if you're speaking to a large audience in front of the mirror. And it takes a bit getting used to. But through that process, you pick up the things you aren't doing and you actively self-reflect and you're like, oh, am I doing this? And maybe your target is like, okay, I'm going to try and vary my voice more this one day. And by doing that, you actually end up doing it, and you naturally have that focus. For example, for 1 week, you're going to vary your voice more. You're going to have stronger intonations, for example. It's a great mechanism for actually implementing those changes. Second thing, very quickly, is I really think your mental state affects public speaking more than you think. Like, if you are feeling happy and enjoyable and you want to spread that information to other people, then that will come through naturally in your voice. Like, a lot of, hand gestures and kind of, when someone's really feeling what they're saying and they genuinely believe it, it hits differently. Like, as for lack of a better phrase, it really comes through in an authentic way, and that gets people to buy into you. And even if your style is unconventional, if it's authentic, people often will buy into it. So those are my two big takeaways of public speaking there.
Agreed. Like, just to finally add really quickly to what Amir says, before a really big speech, I might even listen to some inspirational music to get me going. So the mental state really does play a part. And often when I'm feeling down, I will definitely give a worse speech than when I'm feeling myself. So yeah.
100%. Junior's asked another question. Do virtual internships genuinely have impactful weight?
Truth be told, I don't actually know the answer to that question because it's so recent. I think it remains to be seen in terms of how much they weight it. But I think one thing that we can know quite well is it does get you well acquainted with the industry, and naturally, any experience within the same industry when you're applying for another role will show some level of initiative, and it will also increase your likelihood of getting a return offer for the firm that you virtually intern with.
Yeah, so a couple of quick comments there. There's a real big distinction between like you did like one that is competitive and non-competitive. A competitive virtual internship will likely have a large weight on CV in terms of prestige. You probably miss out on some degree in terms of what you actually learn, to be perfectly honest with you, and you miss out in terms of social skills, like as a person. But that prestige of a big name is still 100% there. I would say that generally stuff that's like online and non-competitive is not really worth it. Like if you have a virtual internship which is literally just virtual and no human interaction involved, I would not count that as very, very high. What I would say as a general point is that doing your own thing, like a startup or like a project or a fundraiser, is better if you have nothing else and you can't get any other internships.
Yep.
Is there anything else to add there?
No, I think that was pretty good.
Omer Rashid asks, hey, what are your thoughts on the trade-off between prestige and brand name impact in terms of internship experience for management consulting recruitment? Sorry, Omer, do you mean there like what are the trade-offs in terms of like getting the job, as in like, do you mean BCG versus like, I don't know, Oliver Wyman, or do you mean like if I want to get into BCG, the trade-off between the different other internships you can get in order to get BCG? I know, Azhar, how do you interpret that?
Yeah, I am slightly confused as well. I think let's wait for clarification on that one, and in the meantime, answer another one.
I think that's actually the final question. Hannah's just said, you should do TED Talks on this. Your advice is useful. Just reading tips online is more passive and never leads to improvement. So she'll try those. So that's really nice of you to say. Thank you, Hannah. So I'm just going to answer Omer's question because I think it only really makes sense in the case that it's like, I think it only makes sense in the case that you're applying for like the top consulting firms and you're like, oh, which ones do I do? Do I do something that's impactful, or do I do something that's has a prestige and brand name? Like, as in, for example, should I spend my summer doing my startup, which is impact and no brand name, or should I go to JP Morgan, which is all brand name but maybe less impact?
Oh,
I think the trade-off is there.
Yeah, I see that. So I think the answer to that's actually quite easy, but probably not the one you want to hear. Which is, it really depends on you and what's important to you. For myself, after I'd finished off at IBM, it was far more important for me that I did something that was impactful, and that I did have that time and that freedom to work on my startup, and I very much prioritize that over getting a grad role or anything like that, like Google or anything like that. So it was depending on what I wanted to do and my long-term planning. So that would be my answer.
So Omer's he's just clarified there. Sorry for the confusion. Do you think it's better to intern at a small startup where you can have more impact, or interning at a large, fast-moving consumer goods corporation where you don't have as important work? For me, I think it's all a trade-off of how much. Like, when you say FMCG company, is it kind of a one that's kind of a decent company, or is it kind of your top tier kind of bulge bracket kind of like really good firms? And when you say intern at a small startup, is it your startup or one where you genuinely have huge impact, or is it one where it's like there's a greater degree for impact, but it's still not that high. It all depends on that. My personal thing is try and do both, like try and have maybe during the year you do one thing and maybe you have a different summer experience. Key things though for consulting is like leadership experience. You need it. Like if you're going to be stuck at the back of the office and your top firm gives you zero leadership experience, that's not going to be enough. Like at university, you have to be doing other things on top of that, like that are in addition to the internship that you work.
Yeah, completely agree with Amir here. Both would be ideal, but like it really depends on the degree to it, and it depends what you're applying for. As Amir mentioned, like different firms have different prerequisites, like consulting industry, for example. But you might still want to consider the lower impact one potentially if it is like the most prestigious in the industry and opens more doors. Yeah, and I think on that note, Jonathan has arrived in the waiting room, so I'll just let him in.
Great.
Hello.
Hey, Jonathan. How you doing, man?
All right. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
It's good to finally meet you because I feel like I've been seeing you on LinkedIn from like the very beginning.
I feel like I've seen you two around, but like it's nice to finally meet you two as well. I hope you're right. I hope I pronounced your name okay as well. Like, was that fine?
Sorry?
Can you hear me okay? Sorry.
Yeah, we got you back there. We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you fine. It's a tiny delay, it's all, but it's not an issue.
So how can we help you today, Jonathan?
Awesome. Yeah. So I would like your advice on my CV, specifically applying for digital business analyst roles in like for McKinsey or for other MBB companies, or just generally consultancy roles over the summer, like over the next 2 summers. Other than that, like sorts of other things that I'm interested in is like just generally working on like, so I'm not sure if you've heard of Palantir, but a role there that I'm quite interested in is forward deployed software engineer. So sort of client facing programming / consultancy roles. This is some sort of like area that I'm quite interested in. My CV. I'll just be like interested to get your thoughts on it, get thoughts on like preparation, getting recommendations, things like that.
Okay. Just for everyone at home, this is actually the first time that we're seeing Jonathan's CV, so it's gonna be on the fly. Amir, could you go down slightly as well so we can just take a quick overall look?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yep. Okay, so it is a single page, which is good. Okay, cool. So do you want to go first or shall I, Amir?
Happy for you to go first, Azhar.
Okay, so a couple of things. The first thing is you're doing a lot of things really well. Is something I think is really important for you to realize. Like you've quantified in a lot of places really well, which shows that you have added value. So you have a significant advantage over a lot of other people generally in terms of their CVs, both in terms of everything you've done, but also in the way that you frame things. The biggest thing that I would mention straight off the bat is personally, I don't like formatting. And what I mean by that is I think it's 2 things. So the first thing is I think you want to make it a bit clearer in terms of the different headings and stuff and having a few different like fonts and stuff, because right now it looks like there's like a huge blocks of text. That is like as a recruiter, I would like it to be slightly a bit more separated out, and that might mean like reducing the a little bit of content here and there, so you have that room to space. Would be the first thing I'd mention.
Yeah.
The second thing I'd mention is if you go back up to the top of it. Remove the bit at the bottom where you say happy to provide references on request. Generally speaking, if they want references, I'll request them. So I always say, to remove that part. I do like your education stuff. I think it's really strong. I really like how you mention, the percentile that you're in globally. I would probably move your gold in the Olympiads personally to the achievements at the bottom and not in the education. I would like to know a fair bit more about the working as a machine learning engineer at the startup, because for me, it's almost like you've like you've teased me because you've gone, hey, I work at a big startup, but I won't tell you anything else about it. So I would love to know a bit more about what you do there. Would be a definite thing that I would like to see more of. I think that in certain areas, you want to make sure that you're quantifying the value. So, for example, as founder and president of Share Warwick, when you tell me about recruiting a core team and creating marketing and teaching strategies, it's very vague.
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, like, did you redesign the recruitment process? How did you make it better? What was the value that you created? And I think reading that line, it doesn't really demonstrate that to me.
So for me, what I'd say overall is two things. One, formatting, as I mentioned. Secondly, you're someone who, as a very high level overview, you're someone who has a lot of really good stuff. It's just what I want is you to pick and choose a few of them and have more depth and less breadth.
Okay.
I because there's a lot of really good stuff here, and I'm like, okay, well, it depends on what you want to go into, but you might want to highlight and pick certain one of these over other ones. So, for example, if you want to go into software engineering, the machine learning engineer at a stealth startup worth 1.5 mil, sorry, you want to be talking a lot about that, right? But if you want to go into management consulting, for example, founder of this, campus director, Unbox, kind of, head of growth, and debating, team lead, that is really what you want to highlight and be like, yo, this is my best stuff. It really depends on what you want to do, because what I would do, for example, is I think the reason why maybe you haven't got enough detail here is because you just don't have space to talk about your best things.
Yeah.
Like when I read your Unbox stuff, because I know Unbox and some people who run it, what you've actually written is genuinely super impressive. But it's kind of squeezed into this sort of space, like 38% more than any other uni. That means you must have had huge signups coming from Warwick. And talking about how you led that, how you spearheaded that, and how you yourself led to that personal impact and kind of techniques that you use and how you were systematic about it and the approach. I want more details there, if that kind of makes sense. Like, you created a strategy which has like a 5-pronged approach, blah, blah, for example, I'm not sure. And you personally reached like 1,000 students, for example, using that, whatever, and which led to X number of revenue. If there are more details there, that can be incredibly impressive. I think the key is to pick and choose what you want to go for. Like, I know, here you've used data analysis skills. It doesn't sound that impressive. You've just done payments. But here, the pandas library to do the budget. Okay, that actually could be really impressive, but maybe cut it out depending on what you want to do. But if you want to go into like audit or something, well, it actually is really impressive. So I think I'd have to pick and choose what to remove. My instinct is I'd remove treasurer from Warwick Congress. I might put this in interest, like volunteered to help tutoring, and remove this here. Technical skills, definitely include. The team lead here, I think this sounds really good, actually. The modeling, again, maybe consider moving it to like achievements or like interest or something like that. Debating, I'd probably leave on if you want to go to consulting, because it's really good. And I'd focus on some of the rest of these here. So I'd remove these two and focus on your more recent ones, give more detail and depth, and really highlight where you yourself had personal impact.
A few small things to add. I think that's spot on as well by Amir. I think I suggest the exact same thing. A few other things to add would be that one thing I worry is that you're trying to like add everything in one. So for example, like the line under head of growth, you're like design and created pair programming, and then at the end you're like also 52 signups and like Same thing with Unbox, right? Like it's one bullet point, but you're telling me a world of information. I would really like that separated out into maybe 3 different bullet points. And it doesn't have to be as descriptive, if that makes sense. You could say something like, I don't know, co-led expansion of Unbox within Warwick, reaching 40,000 plus students. And then, the negotiations is like a separate thing, if that makes sense. So there are loads of different ways within which you can do that, but it just better segments your bullet points out to make it for greater readability. And it makes you sound that you've done more things within the company than when you put it all into one sentence.
One other quick thing I'd add is I think it's like something a lot of very smart people do, is you often, because you're so smart and you do so many amazing things, you will let your experiences speak for you, but you'll never dress them up. It's like, you sell, you're like, oh, this will sell itself. Because the kind of person like, my product is so good that it will just sell itself. I don't need marketing. So for example, here, directing their work operations, you speak as if like you're like casually doing it and you're letting the achievements and numbers speak for the value, as opposed to saying something like you were appointed or selected or, appointed to spearhead the work operations. If you see what I mean, like there's a lot of places in which you can change your phrasing a little bit to kind of make you sound more impressive, essentially. If that sort of makes sense.
That's fair. I suppose a point which like I sort of wanted to point out is the reason why I guess I didn't really develop the first 2, and I totally agree. Like this is something that I haven't really realized before, or I did realize, but I was a bit wary of doing it because I was just like, like I kind of just want to show off that I've got like a lot of experience rather than like really deep experience. Which is why I guess I kind of had a lot of those points. But I suppose the reason why the first 2 aren't developed is because they're quite recent roles that I've just like taken over the summer. So like we're still developing the product and like what we're still working on. And for example, with the startup, launch isn't until December. So like I want basically, so I would appreciate some advice on this. Like, how do I show off like that I'm doing this thing when I'm not allowed to like reveal huge amounts of information about it, because it's just like if we did, then like the thing we're working on is like the idea could probably be stolen, so it's important to like keep it stealth.
So that's a great question. Myself and Amir also relate to the issue of like, not for CVs, but in general being like, hey, we can't talk about it. What I would say is, Jonathan, what can you say publicly that you have done since you came on board?
Like loads. Basically, it's been like huge amounts of data analysis with like loads of data points and like loads of like figuring out like supplementary details from like quite basic things.
In which case, talk about the data analysis that you did, how it informed some of the company decisions and the value that provided. Will be very useful.
I suppose also another point that I might add on, I don't know, like I would appreciate advice on this, is I've been, because the team, so our team is like 5, 6, including founders. So we have like, it's quite small. And like, because of that, like, so the person I'm working with, they like head up the machine learning things that they'll be leaving soon. And then, so alongside them, we've had to sort of make like a lot of strategic decisions. So like, how would I phrase that? How would I like talk about it without like giving away? This is like the brilliant thing, is that exactly what we've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would wonder if you can talk about it in a more generic way. So if there are ways of explaining why you're impressive, that it is not because of what you have literally done, but more about the way you've gone about it. So maybe you've had to learn like, you've applied a variety of machine learning techniques, and or you self-taught maybe stuff like K clustering, whatever. Like you list out a bunch of them, like, and then you yourself selected the best one for the for the particular scenario. Like it was the systematic way you went and approached about it, and you self-taught that's impressive. Or is the fact that the company changed their strategy because of you, or you wrote a certain proportion of the algorithm that's used. Like ways of explaining what you're doing that are like, okay, this clearly must have been impressive for them to do this. That doesn't directly reveal it's not impressive because of what you've done, but rather the way you went about it and the impact it had on other people, if that makes sense. Like, it's kind of like dark matter, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's not that we know what it is, but we can see the effect it has on other things, and therefore we can infer that it is impressive. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that's useful.
Yeah, I would completely add on to that. Like, so I could give you a sentence to make my work on the startup sound impressive without telling you anything about my startup. So I could talk about, you know, some kind of systematic approach that I took, which led to development time, the development cycle actually being shorter for MVP, saving, I don't know, £14,000 in costs and 6 weeks in terms of product launch. I've told you nothing about my idea. You have no idea what it is, but simply the way within which I've gone about it, it's clear that I've added value to the company. So that's the way to go about it.
Yeah, and sorry, sort of one final question. Like, is this structure fair? Like, overall structure in terms of experience and then skills and achievements? Or I've seen sometimes people for consulting CV specifically, they'll often put like work experience and then they'll put leadership positions, or like education, work experience, and leadership positions. This seems to be like quite a common structure. Like, is this current structure okay, or would you recommend changing it accordingly?
It depends on your experiences, I think. Like, I don't think one is like the best. I think it's like, it depends on your particular combination of experiences that see which is the most sensible. I used work and leadership up top, and that's because I didn't have that much work experience per se. So I could use work and leadership to kind of put that in there. And then I had like, you know, skills and achievements at the bottom. Either works. It's just making sure that the first two that they read just sound impressive to what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like, because really what you're doing is you're messing with the order in which they see things. Like, that's what that actually means. Like, order, it has no value in and of itself, but the value comes from the fact that you can change what they see chronologically. So if you really want to highlight your leadership, then you actually put work and leadership as one and move this right to the top of experience.
Yeah, definitely agreed with Amir there.
Like, it all depends what you want to highlight, and your structure is just a mechanism by which you decide what you want to highlight. It, in and of itself, has little value.
If you go down to the bottom, Amir, there is one thing I would slightly change. I personally wouldn't have the team leadership and underneath skills and achievements, because it's more of an extracurricular activity. And I think, you know, you've got your technical skills and your team leadership under the same one, which I feel like they're different things personally. Amir might disagree, but I would separate that out slightly.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think either is fine. They can go. I think they are different, but I don't think it's like weird or anything. Like, whatever is your preference. But yeah, I hope that was useful for you, Jonathan. I don't know if you have any final questions before we finish up.
Probably one. Keep asking the questions. One final question. It's probably like, so throughout I've used this first out of 220, sort of to show that like I was I was chosen this like out of this many people, or like I was given this thing out of this many people. Is this like a fair way to structure it? Or like, so for example, if I was like 14 people chosen for a role out of like 2,000 applicants, like would writing that like be fair? Because I just found that it saves space. But like, what would you do?
I think it's the smartest way to do it personally.
Concur.
Yeah, I think again, be a bit careful with shoehorning. I think is but generally speaking, you demonstrating that what you did is actually impressive through showing me that is what made me look at your CV and go, wow, from the beginning. But again, careful not to shoehorn like the different like Duke of Edinburgh boards. I think they can go in the achievements. The head of student council, I don't think that belongs right next to your grades. But generally speaking, you know, great CV. And I look forward to, you know, like seeing how you restructure it and like how it goes.
Thank you.
No worries at all, man. All right, awesome. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in this episode. If you want to be on the show, send us a DM on LinkedIn. The information is in the description. We'll see you next week, and we hope you all have a fantastic day.
Yeah. Catch you in a bit, Jonathan.
Okay, bye.
Bye.